Hello, my name is Dr. Shambles, and on this video we'll be going over a tier list that I'm gonna make that will analyze the different matchups of the OP06 against Red Purple Law. Now, I would just like to say a little overview on the OP06 when it comes to Red Purple Law. I believe he got a nice buff, but I believe some other leaders got just a better buff and kinda overwhelm us with that buff. But when the B01 comes out, I actually, in my opinion, I think the Red Purple Law got the best buff when it came to that set. AB01 just solves so many problems of the deck and just ups the consistency and the aggression. So yeah, for now on OP06 he's still a lot better and he's still very viable. But I think AB01 it's when we're going to see the deck complete. As well, the other things I would like to say is I am not putting here the three brothers structure, each leader, so the Ace, the Sabo and the Luffy. This is because by the time of this recording, structure deck hasn't come out yet on the scene. And the only research I did was watching replays on those decks. So I prefer not taking that much of the opinion of the others and putting them over here, because if that was the case, there was no need for me to create this channel, because this channel is about my opinion on things, obviously. So I'm just not gonna put them there. I wanna have at least a bit of experience with them to then put them maybe in another video, I don't know. But yeah, also to keep in mind, this is my opinion only. You can always disagree if you want to. This can come sometimes depending on the playstyle that you Red Purple Law. Let's just get right into it. This is our leader, Red Purple Law. Then we have we counter. This is where I'll be putting the leaders that I believe Red Purple Law counters. There's an in between the we counter and neutral. This is when I'm a little bit undecisive on the matter, so I'll just put them over here. Then we're gonna have a neutral, which I believe is 50-50, or depending on the variants, if the deck has more variants, that could make the deck more unpredictable. We'll get to that. There's an in between, once again, for these two tiers, in case I'm very undecisive if it's a neutral matchup or if we do get countered by the leader. And lastly, then we get countered, which is, well, when we get countered. And then the last is I have no idea. This is when I have little experience or no experience maybe against the leader, so I'm just gonna put him over here and just not give an opinion of it. So let's get right into it. First of all is Red Zoro. Now, Red Zoro is very neutral. This is because if they are playing the Straw Hats variant, we do find it easier, you know. There's still some percentage of possibility of them winning against us, but it's very, very hard for them to do so. This is because the Straw Hats variant does play the very little small bodies, you know, very small bodies, which are very easy to take away with our leader ability as well as with our rush characters. So we do have much more board control and we can control their aggression so much easier if they're playing that variant. There is another variant although, which is there's actually two variants, I will explain it in a bit, which is the Whitebeard or Events variant. Now there's three cores to Zoro, which is the Straw Hats, the Events, and the Whitebeards. Normally when they play the Whitebeards, they are playing the Events as well, but sometimes they are playing the Events and playing with the Straw Hats and no Whitebeards parrots. So keep that in mind. If they are playing the Events and the Straw Hats, it still be easier, but if they are playing the Whitebirds with the Events, you will find that they are finding much easier to take away our board and to build much more pressure. As well as with the Whitebeards, they'll be putting bigger bodies, which can be harder for us to remove. This is why I put him on neutral, because we never know what the variant will be playing, and if so, we have some more difficulty over some other variants, but still it's pretty neutral. We can still win very well. Next is Red Green Law. I believe we counter Red Green Law. This is because the Red Green Law did not get such a good buff on OP06. He will get a better buff on EB01, but also will do Red Purple Law, so we'll still counter it on EB01. I don't know, again, same thing with Zoro. They just build a lot of small bodies, which are really easy to get rid of. And if we can keep their board in control as well as our aggression, it becomes a very easy matchup. So we do counter Red Green Law. Next is Blue Purple Kaido. Now, this deck is still very viable on OP06, by the way. I think this deck can be really fun. The reason I'm not even thinking about it is just because I have fun with Red Purple Law. But this deck is actually very fun and very viable. But against our strategy, we do counter it. We do need to keep in check with the 10 drop Kaido. This is a card when they play it at 10 down, they just get rid of all of the board. So that card, it does counter us a little bit, and with their stage card they do accelerate to the 10 down, but still I do win most of the games. Most of the time I only lose when I break my hand, so it's not really that hard of a matchup, so we do still counter. Next is Whitebeard. Now we do get counter here, especially now that people are playing less and less blocker laws, which is the only way we have to keep the hand size of the Whitebeard in check. Although Whitebeard is decreasing in popularity, he does still counter us, and for example here on my locals I do know there's at least 3 very dedicated Whitebeard players. So yeah, we do get counter very hard by him. If you do see blocker law, I mean, this does make the matchup easier, but it does still counter us. Again, if we come up with a good strategy, and again with the blocker law we win well, but most of the time we'll be struggling. Thankfully, with the buff that we got on OP06, most of the time we'll be struggling and then we'll lose, but they will be struggling as well. So although the matchup is more even than in OP05, thanks to the Reiju buff of us getting hand size to our hand, right? They do still counter us. Next is Katakuri. Now I'm gonna put this in between. I believe he's more to the neutral than to the counter, but thanks to our strategy we can be very aggressive and we can still keep him in check. When it comes to the yellow matchups over here, he is the easiest one. No, not the easiest one. The easiest one is Queen. But I wouldn't put him in here or in here. I don't know, he's very much here in neutral. But there's just some variants of the deck, because in OP06 the yellow did get a somewhat nice buff. But his buff is still not sufficient. We do still in some way counter, but he's not on the neutral, he's in between, I believe. Next is green, purple Don Flamingo. Now this man is going as we counter. This is because he's a very slow deck, and although he can counter us if he's playing the bird cage, there are some ways around it, you know. It does not, unlike Perona, it does not rest our characters unless we attack with them. So yeah, it does make it easier, and sometimes even if they play birdcage and me swinging with my characters, sometimes it's just too much pressure that they cannot deal with it. So I'm just gonna put as we counter, but he can very well go in between, depending on if they get the most perfect hand and we break, but you know, that doesn't happen most of the time, so I'm gonna put it as we counter. Next is Rebecca. Now I'm just gonna put Rebecca as I have no idea. This is because I haven't seen her in the sim every time, well, since I've been playing in OP06, but when he came in OP05, because of our problems with consistency and hand size, she was pretty much at the neutral or in between here. That is because if we did get a decent hand in OP05, we could make insane amounts of pressure to her. But I just don't know when it comes to OP06. I don't know how our buffs or her buffs, if she got any. I don't even know if she got any buffs on OP06, how we would do in this matchup, so I'm just gonna put her in. I have no idea. Next is Blue Yellow Queen. Now I have actually two recent games, so I can put him here. We can just make insane amount of aggression, and his bodies are not too hard to remove. Even if you are playing promo law, the promo law just kind of obliterates this leader, to be honest. But still, they do still have a chance to come back. Obviously, I mean, we struggle late game, and late game is where the queen shines the best. So if they can make us, can stall for late game, we will struggle. But most of the time I found that I can accelerate the game to the point that I can finish game before they start, you know, they start shining, so to speak. So I'm just gonna put them as we counter. Next is Crocodile. Now I'm gonna put him here. He is going to get a buff in AB01 and OP07, but as for the OP06, I actually haven't seen anything new on him, and we still don't struggle with him at all. I mean, by the time he starts dropping his purple Crocodile, it's already too late. like 9 out of 10 times it's already too late. If they can start the momentum by dropping 2 crocodiles in 2 turns, fine, but still very hard for them to go against us. Bello Betty, this is another deck we do counter. I mean, Bello Betty is as aggressive, if not more, than Red Purple Law, but the thing is, Red Purple Law got a buff on the gas. Thanks to Raichu, we can refill our gas very well. As for Bello Betty, she does not. This means that you can probably starve her better than she can starve you. Not only that, her yellow variant is not so active on the deck. She does play more red, and red does struggle in late game. Although our late game is bad, our late game is still better than Bello Betty. So we do still counter her. I don't know, maybe on OP07 she will get a better buff because Dragon is coming out. But for now, I still believe we do counter her very well. Now, this is Rocinante, or Don Quixote, sorry if I'm saying the name wrong. Now, I'm gonna put him in between. Most of the time we'll be countering, but if he does get, and this will happen more times than I would care to admit, if he does get a a good hand, or the most optimal hand, he can really stall for late game and then just change the game around. He will need a somewhat specific hand, but this can happen. And it happens more often than, again, I care to admit. So I'm just gonna put him in between. Although I do believe he goes a little bit as we counter, I'm just gonna put him in between. Next is Blue Black Sakazuki. Now I'm just gonna put this man over here. I don't know, he got, to be honest, the black color got overtuned in OP06. Hopefully in AB0, well, as I'm seeing in AB01, it'll be very different. But right now on OP06, this black color just got very overtuned, and Sakazuki not only got the black color buff, he also got a really good blue color buff. So him taking away our board and stalling for late game is very easy now, so it does counter us very well. I'm still trying to come up with a viable strategy against him, because I believe if we do find a good strategy against him like I did in OP05, we stand a chance, but for now I haven't, and his consistency is just too much against me. Next is Purple Luffy. I'm just gonna put him in neutral. He can go over here, but I'm gonna put him in neutral. This is because I am playing Raise Max and Gordon, and if I see one of them as well as some Dawn Ramp in the very first hand as the starting hand, we don't struggle with this much. But he's still on neutral, he still is a very good matchup against us in somewhat. But I don't know, we did get a good buff and we do not struggle as much. But he's still on neutral, can still be a 50-50. But if we do not see a Raise Max or a Gordon, this can be somewhat of a problem. But it's still winnable, but with Gordon and Raise Max it just becomes much an easier match. Next, I'm just gonna put NL over here. We did get a good buff and we do not struggle as much as we did in OP05. Not only there's 2 variants to NL, which is the Sky Essence, which is the one we play against in OP05, and in OP06 it came another variant, which is pretty much with Wano, and we keep Yamatos and Big Moms and Katakuri, so it's a very mashed up kind of variant where you just kind of play for luck, so to speak, for your triggers, and whatever hand you have most of the time is playable. Obviously in the starting hand of an L you still want to see like a Katakuri or a Big Mom or a Yamato, one of those 3, to kind of ensure that you will have late game. But yeah, he did not get such a good buff. I do know already, it's been announced on OP07 he'll get a very good buff, but he still does counter us because of his base strategy. Although we do not struggle as much, we do still struggle, and we are still dependent on the 2k Sanchi strategy. But yeah, thankfully we do not struggle as much, and it's somewhat more enjoyable to play against him. He's pretty much on the same situation as Red Whitebeard. Although most of the games will somewhat be close now, we still do lose most of them because they do counter us. Next up is the Perona. Now Perona does counter us. Thankfully, just like Sakazuki in OP05, on OP06 we can find somewhat of a strategy to play against her better, and I have been finding some success with it. But she does counter us, and not only that, if she has the most optimal hand, you just do not stand a chance. So yeah, that's just how it is. Next is Green Yellow Yamato. Like Perona, she can be a very annoying matchup. If we do get Shiraya and we go first, with Shiraya and we drop it on the second turn, Shiraya will help us swing that first swing of Yamato. So Shiraya is the biggest counter to Yamato, and we rely too much on him. We can somewhat still dodge her first attack if we have enough 2Ks in hand, but that would decrease our hand size, and by that time the matchup is very hard. But yeah, as soon as she gets the first swing out and puts it at 2 lives, her leader effect by putting 2 rested on can overwhelm us. So yeah, she does counter us still. Moria, now I'm gonna put this here. Now this Moria is more over here than on neutral. This is because his hand is very unpredictable, just like NL. And although NL does have insane insurance with Yamato category and Big Mom on late game, Moria has Moria for late game. If he does not get a decent hand, as soon as he gets a decent hand, he's already very hard. No, it's not very hard, but it is hard for us. But if he gets a good or the most optimal hand, it just overwhelms us and can stall very well until he gets the Moria card. As soon as he drops Moria card, just like Blue Black Sakazuki, as soon as these 2 block Moria, they just start comboing off and they just overwhelm us with board by at the same time taking our board out. If he does a decent hand, we can still somewhat play against him. If he does have a bad hand, he goes over here. But I do admit most of the time he will be over here. I believe this is just because in OP06, Black Collar is just a little bit overtuned. Thankfully for what I saw in EB01, many of our problems against him will be solved. So I'm looking very forward for EB01. But for now he's in between, but he'll probably go over here. Next is Kid. Now Kid, I'm just gonna put him over here. I did win some matches, you know, with the green kit, and although I won every single one of them, I just don't have that much experience. So maybe there's a strategy out there that I don't know. I mean, I think I only went 2 games on the sim against him in OP06, and he did not get many buffs in OP06, but in AB01 he will get somewhat of good buffs. So for now, he'll stay over here, but maybe we'll see him some play in AB01 and in OP07 thanks to Bonnie being released, which is just some support for him as well. Next is Blue Crocodile. I'm just gonna put him over here. Now, most of the time he'll be over here, but there will be some times that if we brick and he just get a decent hand, they can go over here, but still, he will never be over here. He will not counter us. Most of the time he'll be either neutral or he'll be an easy matchup, so I'm just gonna put him in between. But he can go either way. It's a very unpredictable matchup, but we'll either counter him and don't struggle as much, or we'll struggle a little bit. Obviously, he does, thanks to him being a little bit here on the neutral, he can win against us, but those wins will not be as consistent as the Zoro and Purple Luffy matchups. So yeah, I'm just gonna put him over here. Sorry if you guys are hearing rain. Next is Purple Kaido. Same thing with Blue Purple Kaido. We do need to take care of the 10 cost drop Kaido, as well as the Rush Kaido, by the way, which is a 9 drop cost. But still not as much of a struggle. Again, I do still believe he is viable, just like the Blue Purple Kaido. And he's a very fun leader. I actually played a winning deck on that got first place on locals, and it's a very fun deck. But we do counter it with our strategy, thankfully, so he'll stay over here. He can go a little bit over here, but it'll just be over here if he gets the most optimal hand, which will not happen most of the time. Next will be Red Purple Luffy. Now I'm gonna put him over here. He can go either way. This depends on our hand or their hand. To be honest, most of the time he'll be over here on neutral. This is because there's a very simple strategy of the 8k swing that you do that was developed in the OP05. That does help us a lot in applying the early pressure against Red Purple Luffy. Not only that, if you go second, you'll have more Dawn to make more swings, more 6k swings, and he does not get as much hand size advantage as Whitebird, so it's an overall easier match, but he'll still at least be neutral, or if he gets, you know, if we do not get a better hand than them, he'll just go over here and overwhelm us. This also takes in account the two variants of the deck. One variant is an all spread out variant. This means they try to be somewhat good in early, mid and late game, when there's another variant that they just pretty much try to defend a little bit on early and mid game, but then they build a very strong late game. Again, that is not such a problem, to be honest, because we take advantage of them not being as strong in early and mid game. But yeah, still a very neutral, or we do get counters. So I'm just gonna put him in between. Next is Red Purple Kid. Now I've been seeing him in somewhat in the same. I'm just gonna put him over here. I'm not gonna even talk about him. This is because I don't even know what the strengths of this deck are. Next is Green Utah. Now I've been seeing a lot of Green Utahs on the scene thanks to the event. Not only that, people do still like to play her in OP06, even going forward on the event. We do counter her. She can stall a little bit of our aggression, but I find it that most of the time we don't struggle with her as much. This obviously depends, always will depend on the hands, obviously. I keep saying it, but will obviously depend on the hand. But most of the time we won't struggle with her. Although she can slow down our aggression a little bit, she cannot do as much as Perona or Yamato, for example. Next is Green, Blue, Zoro and Sanji. Now, I haven't played against them in the sim. I'm lying. I did play 2 games. I did win 2 games, but again, just like the other 2, I just don't have enough experience to talk about the matchup. So I'm just gonna put him over here. I did try them, by the way. I did make a deck profile, but it's not a very good leader overall. So maybe he'll go over here on the weak counter, but this is just out of respect because I can be wrong and he can somehow counter us. It's just because he's not popular, he's not being putting any results in the OP06 or OP or even in AB01, to be honest. He's not popular, he's not doing well, and I have not been seeing him, so I just don't know. Next is Ace. Now, he's not popular, but he does counter us. Well, the same reason with Zoro, he does play a lot of events that remove our board and will be struggling late game because he does play the Ace, which will get Rush, and he does play the Whitebird, which makes him go up to a 7k leader, which will struggle a little bit. Out of all the people that counter us here, he is the weakest one, I believe, but still he does counter us, and if he does get a decent or good hand, we will struggle a lot, but he is still viable. Next, final actually, and definitely least. I'm sorry, just don't have fun playing against Nami. Fortunately, we do counter Nami. We can go wide and then we can make some bigger attacks to make her spend more than one event to defend our attacks. Pretty much she struggles everybody that has the red color because we just make a lot of pressure, and if she does not defend, eventually she'll run out of cards in life and then lose, and if she defends, she'll eventually run out of cards in hand. So yeah, either way, most of the time our pressure does do well against her. So that's just it. Thank you so much for watching. This was the tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe and like if you like Red Purple LOL. Do comment if you do disagree, and if you do disagree, please do say some input to me. Again, this is just my opinion, so yeah, goodbye. Hey, I just forgot the Jones matchup. Will be in between weak counter and neutral. This is because we do not struggle, but they can catch us off guard. So he'll be in between. Most of the time, to be honest, he'll be in neutral, but it depends too much on the hand we get and on the hand they get to even say if we counter or not. So he'll go in between with most of the time going neutral. So yeah.